HTTV in association with Absolute Warehouse Services. Phil, thank you for joining us. Firstly, how are you and your family in this difficult situation?
Yeah, we're fine, thank you. Family are fine. Everyone's fit and healthy. We've been adhering to the lockdown, probably like most people have. We haven't really got out and about at all, barring to walk the dog in an isolated way and do our exercise, and we've kept away from people and done what we're supposed to do. So we're all fine. Everyone's well, thank you, and getting used to Groundhog Day every day.
Yeah, absolutely. We've brought you on this call, obviously, to discuss the EFL and their plans over this season and next season. Earlier this week, we saw the framework that they put together, and we all saw their desire to complete the current campaign. Where do we stand on that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as we're concerned, as far as the concepts of finishing the season, yeah, absolutely. The season should be completed when it's safe to do so, and it should be relegation and promotion. You know, everyone's worked hard. We're 3/4 of the way through the season, and so absolutely, we are on board with that. But there is a much bigger issue that needs to be discussed in tandem with that, in our opinion. So we are, as a club, absolutely in favour of the season finishing by way of games hopefully being played when it's safe for everyone to do so, that there should be relegation and promotion. But I feel that there is a much bigger issue that isn't being addressed, that needs to be addressed at the same time as those discussions around finishing the season.
100%. Like you say, that's very much a short-term measure, but thinking longer term and the future of football, the next season, for example, where do we stand on that? What are your thoughts on that campaign?
Well, we're in a situation whereby we're in the middle of a pandemic, you know, tens of thousands of people losing their lives, unfortunately, which is horrible. The government have confirmed categorically that there will be no crowds at any sporting events until such a time as there is a vaccine. Certainly that's going to be looking like 2021. And what that means for football at every level is that there will be no match day revenue, there'll be no income coming through, very unlikely there'll be much by way of sponsors and advertising, season ticket sales, corporate hospitality, you know, everything. Football will be without income other than broadcast income. And as we've all been reading, you know, for the last few weeks, it is that the broadcasters are very much invoking clauses that relate to displacement of games not being played, and they're looking to claw back hundreds of millions of pounds, and this season and probably next, because next season won't start on time either, and that's going to have a significant effect right the way down the pyramid. So for me, it's all well and good us talking about finishing the season, and that's great. Everybody wants that to happen, but for me, you cannot agree to finish a season in these circumstances until there has been discussion, dialogue, and agreement as to how the football pyramid, and that's the whole pyramid, can survive a prolonged period without any revenue or barely any revenue at all. And for me, that is a much more important discussion and agreement that needs to take place than the completing of the season. It needs to happen in tandem. You know, I am absolutely acutely aware that there are clubs further down the pyramid that are days away from going into administration. There are clubs in our division that are probably only weeks away from going into administration. And there are clubs at every level, probably including the Premier League, who will absolutely go into administration if there is no income coming into them for that prolonged period of time, 8 to 12 months. It simply cannot afford to do that. And we're being asked to fund additional costs to complete the season. The cost of testing is not insignificant. It runs into 6 figures. There's additional things that we have to do to you know, in relation to safety and so on. And that's absolutely fine. I have no issue with that at all. But you're asking clubs potentially further down the pyramid and who aren't in maybe our situation in Parachute to do the same thing, but there's no solution in place to tell them whether or not that extra expenditure is going to put them further down the road to going out of business. And that's the reality of it. And what I'm saying is that we need to have that dialogue and come to those conclusions now at the same time that we're discussing completing the season. Because, football, without that revenue, it doesn't have a pyramid, and football needs the pyramid. The pyramid that we've got in this country is phenomenal, and clubs in the Premier League and so on, and some people probably don't think that matters, but Premier League clubs need the pyramid to develop their younger players. If you look at us, how many players that we've had, Ben Chilwell and Izzy Brown, and this season we've got Emile Smith-Rowe, and we've had Danny Ward, and we can keep going to Keel Grabara. And if you look at the Championship and League One and League Two, there are several hundred young players that are there on loan to gain experience and develop from Premier League clubs. And similarly, the Championship needs League One, League Two, and the non-league to develop their young talent, and League One and League Two need the non-league pyramid to develop their young talent. And if we don't fix this at the same time and make sure that there is a solution for clubs at every level of the pyramid now, and discuss and agree this now, then young players will lose that ability at all levels, and clubs will lose that ability to develop those young players. And that'll provide a real barrier in football moving forward, and it's very, very dangerous for the sport. Notwithstanding the fact that football without a pyramid in this country is to me, it no longer exists. It ceases to exist. So it's really, really important. Well, let's not pretend that football didn't cause the problem. We've caused that problem. Football club owners like me, this isn't a criticism of the players, because football clubs agree to pay the players and give them those contracts and so on. So football has created the position that we're in. What we have now is an opportunity with this COVID-19 pandemic to actually get football back into a place whereby it's run better. And there's lots of ways of doing that. Like I say, football's caused this problem, and it's football that should fix it. We shouldn't be looking to the government and the taxpayer to bail out football clubs. There is money in football. We've got broadcast deals. You've got the FA, the EFL, the PFA, and so on. There is money in football, and I don't agree that it should be the government or the taxpayer that bail football out, because football has got itself in this position. There are a number of ways that you could deal with it. You could certainly deal with it by funneling more of the broadcast money down the pyramid to Championship, League One, League Two, and non-league, and reducing the amount that goes into the Premier League, certainly for a period of time. You could look at collectively the organisations getting together and providing that funding, because it has to be on the basis that it's not a loan. It's to keep football alive in this country. And you've then got the PFA. So the PFA basically is the organisation that looks after all of the players. And the reality is that the PFA really have to be part of this solution. For me, what the PFA should be saying is that from the end of this season, all players will take a mandatory 50% salary cut, not a deferral, a cut. Now, a lot of footballers and players who watch this will I will then be a figure of hatred. But what players have got to realise is that if something like that doesn't happen and football isn't assisted by itself, then if a club goes into administration, those players' contracts don't get paid. And secondly, the more clubs that go into administration as a result of there not being a solution, there'll be less opportunity for them to get another club. So they'll be out of work. Because if this isn't solved, you could be looking at 40, 50, 60 of the 92 clubs ceasing to trade within 6 to 12 months. That's how serious this is. That's how big the problem is. And I'm astounded. I wrote a letter to the EFL last week. A week ago, I sent a letter to the EFL executive dealing with this and asking for this to be discussed as part of our ongoing discussions about finishing the season. And I'm really disappointed that I haven't received a reply. So we've distributed that letter to every football club owner in the pyramid, and we've had positive feedback and so on. But someone needs to pick this up, and the authorities need to address this now. And there needs to be an acceptance that football has created this situation. Football needs to get itself out of it. And, you know, if the PFA put in a mandatory 50% salary cut for all players at every level, at every club, until such a time as football has supporters and revenue back, then that will solve the vast majority of the problem without having to go to other bodies and the government with caps in hand. And this will apply to every club. You know, from some of the big top Premier League clubs, the revenue they're going to lose from corporate hospitality and match day and ticketing and so on, it will be in the tens and tens of millions. It really will. And we've got an opportunity to look at fixing this problem longer term. We've got to look at salary caps at every level, including the Premier League. We've got to look at the model over in America where they have salary caps, but you have the marquee players. We've got to look at moving more money down the pyramid from the top level, because the pyramid supports the Premier League and supports that player development and so on. It plays a much more important role than people give it credit for. You know, you could look at reducing the parachute payments by an amount, and then that amount difference is shared down the pyramid to the lower levels, and they get more to support them. There's lots of ways that this can be fixed, but I believe that football has to fix it. We can't be looking to the government and the taxpayer, but I genuinely fear, and it's an absolute reality, that if we don't have those discussions now and agree on how football is going to look after itself during a period with barely any revenue or income, then we're going to be looking at a situation whereby we lose more than half of the clubs in the pyramid, and even more at non-league level. You know, there are clubs now that are on the verge, and we're not having this discussion, Adam. No one's talking about it at the powers that be. It's not included as part of these discussions. So absolutely, yeah, we need to finish the season when it's safe to do so. Relegation and promotion, yes, absolutely. Games should be played when it's safe to do so. But that's 1% of the problem facing football at this moment in time. And I'm genuinely fearful for football if the authorities don't get together now with the PFA and all of the other organisations and actually put something in place so that football can continue at every level whilst we get through this horrible pandemic that we're going through. And no one's talking about it, and it's really disappointing that nobody is, because it's a much bigger problem. It's a much bigger problem.
In terms of the EFL, obviously, you've sent them a letter. We're yet to have a response. The communication from them, how has that been for a football owner in terms of where we're going, for this season in particular? How has that been?
So the communication has been quite good. It's been, you know, often, but you're in a scenario where things are changing by the day, and so it's to be fair, it's difficult for them to give you know, any finality in anything. So the protocol for returning to training, that's changed. You know, things have changed on a daily basis because the medical evidence and the scientific data is changing, and obviously, you know, they're looking at what's happening in Germany, and it's impossible to provide for every eventuality. And so the reality is we have to try and complete the season, and that's the right thing to do. We don't know what obstacles are going to come up, but again, I return to the fact that the likelihood is that it won't be straightforward. It already hasn't been in Germany, certainly in Bundesliga 2, with Dynamo Dresden, who are in lockdown for 14 days, isolated because of positive tests. And you've seen in the Premier League there have been 6 positive tests of players at Premier League clubs yesterday, and we've got the next set of tests probably coming out today. So it won't be straightforward, and that means it's going to take longer. And that makes the problem worse because you've got clubs at every level who have no idea what's going to happen next season. They don't know where they're going to get any revenue from. They don't know whether there's going to be any assistance. And they're being expected to focus on finishing this season, which is fine. But this issue is not being dealt with. And the uncertainty is significant, very, very worrying. You know, we've been told so far, we've been told that we've got to fund the cost of the tests, which is significant, and that's fine. There'll be other additional costs that we'll have to fund naturally. and that's more money. We've also been told that we're gonna have to give back 7 figures definitely from this season's broadcast money, and there's the likelihood that we'll have to return an amount of our parachute money. We don't know how big that amount's going to be. It could be significant, it might not be, but we don't know yet because the Premier League haven't and the broadcasters haven't come to an agreement. So we don't know. We could lose anywhere between 10 and 30 million in the next 12 months. Conservatively, that's the gap, but it's going to be at least 10. And that's a lot of money, whether you're in parachute or not. That's a significant amount of money. We don't know whether there's going to be a transfer window. There are so many uncertainties, and so that's natural, and that's why we have to have these discussions now and have some absolute clarity on what assistance and what the solution is going to be for football clubs at every level during that period. Whilst there's so much uncertainty, it needs dealing with now, it needs agreeing now. So the communication's been absolutely fine. It's very, very difficult, but we're not discussing the important thing, which is it's all well and good saying, let's get this season over with and worrying about it then. It's too late then. Clubs will have gone by that time. By the time this season ultimately finishes, whenever that may be, a significant number of clubs will have gone into administration. Absolute fact. It's fact. And that's a much bigger problem than finishing the season.
Yeah, and the uncertainty then creates more issues, doesn't it? Because you don't know when your revenue's coming in, how much you might lose. The future of football clubs could be, like you say, weeks, months, a year, for example. No one really knows at this moment in time, which makes it even worse, I suppose.
It does, because you can't plan properly. So you cannot plan. And so the danger is that the only way that you can plan is for the absolute worst case scenario. Because currently the scenario is we will have barely any, if any, revenue at all for up to 12 months. So as a football club and a football club owner, you have to plan on that basis. So you have to look at your organisation and go, what do we do? We've got to plan for the basis that we've got absolutely no money coming in, and therefore that's the scenario. Whereas if we had some actual clarity and there were some discussions around and things being put in place about how football's going to get football through that, then you can plan in a slightly different way. We will absolutely, and we've already been planning as a football club. This is brought to the fore that something like this could happen at any time. So you've got to start living within your means, not outside your means. Football clubs at every level have to start living within the means, because this has been a very stark wake-up call. And so that's what we will do anyway, regardless of what happens moving forward. But it's impossible to plan. And if you do plan, it's got to be based on the absolute most catastrophic scenario, which is currently where we are, because there are no discussions taking place about how it could be solved. And no one's willing to have those discussions at this moment in time. And if they are, they're doing it in secret and not telling anybody, which is even worse.
Yeah, and you mentioned obviously that you sent your letter around to other chairs in the football pyramid. What's the response been from them?
Well, look, the responses that I've had have been positive and supportive, and they've also, there's been adding of further things to consider as well. And then there's a number of clubs, as you would expect, that have stayed very silent on it because they don't see that it affects them. That's a very blinkered view, in my opinion, because this will affect everybody at every level. Premier League, clubs that get promoted from the Championship, they will be hit by this. No matter what they think, they will be hit by it in a very, very significant way. And this is a time for football clubs to come together at every level and find and work on a solution for the whole of football, rather than being self-serving and thinking about just their individual problems. Football's got to help itself. And if it doesn't, football is on the verge right now today of eating itself. Genuinely, it's on the verge of dying within 12 months, football in its entirety, because it can't survive with just the Premier League. Simply can't. Football will not survive for all the reasons that I've stated. So everyone has a vested interest in getting a solution to how the football pyramid survives without any income for up to 12 months. It has to find a solution. And as I say, if it doesn't, then there'll be a lot less clubs, and there'll be a lot less clubs for players to go and play for, and they are part of the solution. And they're going to, players and the authorities and the PFA and everybody are going to have to realise really, really quickly that they are part of the solution, and they're going to have to be, and there won't be a choice in that if they want to continue doing what we all love. And it's that serious, and people just seem to be skimming over it, which frightens me.
Thank you very much for that, Phil. Certainly interesting stuff. I hope you and your family keep safe as well.
Same to you. Take care. Stay safe.